The good ones. The crew knows it. The staff knows it. Longtime listeners and viewers know it. Even I know it. If there's breaking news, everyone knows what we're leading the show with. Nick Saban retires. We're leading the show with Nick Saban retiring from Alabama. However, the nights where we don't have a huge news story out there, there's no big bombshell going off, which feels like it's every other day in college football now, those are the good shows. Because those are the shows where we get to go wherever we want to. And friends, we're going a lot of places tonight. There will be a murder on tonight's show. I hate to tell you that. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. There will be a murder in tonight's show. It won't be for the weak at heart, but I think it's important for all of us to experience it together. We're jam-packed. We're high atop a glorious downtown Nashville, Tennessee, Sunday, June 2nd, the year of our Lord 2024. Do you ever stop to think about the wild amounts of change that have happened in our great sport? If you're 15 years old, sometimes you get told you don't know anything about history. You hadn't seen anything yet. But if you're 15 years old, you've already seen more change in college football in your life than some of the folks 3 times your senior. We're going to talk about a lot of it tonight. We've got big questions in 2024. We're going to do this for several shows, but I'm going to start tonight asking some of the questions that are on my mind, and really I'm only doing it so you'll reply, and I'll see some of the questions you're asking, which, hey, could be better than the ones we thought of. Bold predictions, yes, we continue that tonight. We've got a 10. We've got a 10 on the bold prediction scale tonight. I've got some more impact freshmen for you because I felt like the 5 we talked about the other day was just scratching the surface of some of the young guys who are going to get in on the action this year. Hey, we had a really, really good feature the other day that I wanted to get to. We couldn't get to it. It was like position ranking. So we're going to start tonight. I want to get to some offensive line talk and the 10 best units in the country. We're going to drill down on like 6 of them, but really 10 of them. I think we can go that deep and talk about them, and then I'm sure we'll get just across the board agreement on that as well. They're watching us in Boulder, Colorado, Farmington, Missouri, Del Rio, Texas, Clinton, Tennessee. $0 remains our marketing budget on this show. I always have to just slip in thank yous here and there because our numbers are through the roof phenomenal, and it continues to be that way. So thank you guys, and for those of you who are new here, maybe you're here because you heard about us through word of mouth. Just understand, here's how we generally try and operate. Take the rest of the college football shows out there, especially the ones on the bigger, legacy-type platforms. We don't want to sound like them at all. We created this show, frankly, because I didn't like a lot of what was out there, and I knew you felt the same way. I just wanted to actually do something about it. So we don't spend a whole lot. We don't go buy billboards and signage in all sorts of big markets. We don't pay to do that. What we do is we try and do a good show, and if you like it, we just ask you, tell like 5 of your friends. And introduce them to the show. Tell them to sub. Keep the show free. We always want to keep this thing free. Paywalls are man's worst enemy. At least one of them. So we really appreciate that because our numbers are great. Okay, so we got a lot to get to. We got a jam-packed show in this early June, 12 Saturdays away from college football 2024. And in the meantime, I think it's going to be very healthy for us tonight. Just take a brief look back as we end up looking to the future. So I'm a big believer that you can't have crazy predictions in college football. Case in point, if we were to go back to 2014 and you were to ask someone, predict the next 10 years, what will they look like? Anyone who accurately called it would have been checked into an insane asylum. And likewise, anyone who's asking me, hey, what's the next 10 years going to look like? Josh, what will the sport look like in 2034? Nobody knows. Don't believe any of it. Don't believe what I say, or at least don't bank on it. Don't believe what the high-level executives say and the high-level mustaches and the suits. None of them know. Even the people who are in decision-making positions don't know. And the reason is because everybody who's in a position to make decisions is not actually a qualified decision maker. They're all looking around, waiting for someone else to make the move. And so I was thinking to myself while I was driving into the office earlier today, what would it have been like if in 2014, I just got a glimpse to 2024? Just pause and think about that for a second. You are in 2014. It's the first year, I think, Jesse. Yeah, the first year of the college football playoff. 2014, that's the year Ohio State won it all. Urban Meyer wins the national title there. And, we don't even know about bowl opt-outs yet. We don't know about NIL. We don't know about the portal. We don't know about any of this yet. Imagine being that one lucky or unlucky person who is plucked from the sporting society and is given a brief glimpse to 2024, and then imagine They drop you right back in 2014, and it's up to you to tell everyone. No one would believe you. Just like if someone were to be able to somehow predict the next 10 years, no one would believe you. There's going to be some wild stuff happen in the next 10 years in the sport that even I would probably listen to from the prophet from 2034, and I'd say, get out of here, man. What are you talking about? So you could be 15 years old right now. This is the wild part. You could be 15 years old right now, and you have coherent memory of most of this stuff. 5, 6 years old, if you grew up in like a diehard college football house, in Big Ten, I don't care if it was the Pacific Northwest or the South, if they immersed you in college football, you remember from 5 and 6 years old, like you can remember all this stuff. So I've got folks not even in college yet in this audience. We got a huge high school and college-aged audience. Some of you not even in college. You've been around for all this stuff. And my point is, college football's undergone more change in the past decade than it had the previous 50 or so years combined before that. And we're talking about some heavy-hitting stuff there. You're talking about going back to like literal integration of the sport, fundamental changes. I'm counting all that. And even with that being baked in, I'm saying this past few years, we've seen the sport quite literally taken and turned upside down. Just give you a little stat here. It's a paper popper. I think it's worth it. 41 of 69 Power 5 teams last year had a quarterback that transferred as their starter. I want you to imagine 2014 you going to 2023, seeing that, and then going back and telling folks, hey, I just came back from the future. I don't know what happened, but 41 of 69 Power 5 starting quarterbacks were transfers. I have no clue. Well, then you say, I'll be right back. Let me go see if I can get some information on it. I'll be back, guys. And you go back to the future, and they tell you about the transfer portal. And then they don't even give you time to react. They go, shh. Also, we have a thing called NIL. And the NCAA just kind of haphazardly said go on both of those things in the span of like a year or two's time. Not that they had any choice in the matter as we came to find out, but they just kind of dropped it in everyone's lap. And then the calendar went to you-know-where. And so, like, all of a sudden, bowl season got kneecapped. I'll get to that in a second. But just say those things. Those two things, the transfer portal, basic unrestricted movement of talent across the country, and NIL, which was pay for play to a 90th percent degree, that just kind of all came to be. And then the byproduct was rosters massively overturning year over year. You got Deion Sanders. First off, just Deion Sanders as the head coach at Colorado. That alone would have been a big-time headline. But they brought in 73 new guys last cycle. Jesse, I think the number was in the low 70s. I think the number was 73. Can you please just go from 2023 back to 2014 and tell somebody, yeah, Colorado, first off, Deion's there, not as a fan or a spectator like he's the coach. He's going to bring in 73 new guys in the cycle. In 2014, as recently as then, they would have drug tested you. That's impossible. You can't do that. Well, you couldn't do it, but you can do it now. You know, bowl season's been kneecapped because of the expanded playoff. Now, by 2014, we had the playoff. That was year one of the playoff. I'm going to stop short of saying nobody could have known what was coming because some of us kind of had it in our worst fears already, what was to come. And that was the total and complete kneecapping of bowl season. It used to be as recently as 2014 that the phrase bowl opt-out didn't really mean anything. Like, no one had heard of that, and certainly no one used phrases like meaningless bowl game. And now, and this is a very unofficial number because there's no way to really track this, but we think on average about 8 players per team are opting out of bowl games now. That's either due to injury or draft considerations or whatever. 8 per team. 8 per team. Imagine telling someone that. Because this is not like back in colorless TV era. This is 2014, even as recently as then. Man, you wake up on New Year's Day, they're playing the Outback Bowl or the Capital One Bowl or the Gator Bowl, just all the bowl games in Florida, basically. Really big deals. Really, you went 9-3 during the season. You're going to an SEC versus Big Ten bowl game. Huge deal. Felt like for some reason Wisconsin and Iowa played in those things every year. Huge deal. And nowadays they get called whatever they get called by whomsoever calls them that. Could you have known that was coming? Would you have expected bowl season to be rendered that relatively meaningless? It ain't meaningless to some of us, but even some of us who still love bowl season look at it and say, this is a shell of what it once was. What was the cause of that? And could you have seen it coming? Also, the whole realignment part of this, we haven't even gotten to yet. If you're in 2014, we are not too removed from headlines every other day. Chip Brown, who was, I think, over at Orange Bloods at the time, now he's at Horns 24/7. Chip Brown every other day is like scrolling across the ESPN bottom line ticker, reporting about the latest with Texas and OU and their potential move to the Pac-12. Because at the time, it looked almost imminent that Texas and OU were going to go to the Pac-12. So we're not that far removed from that whole period in 2014. Imagine looking 10 years down the road, Texas and OU are going to the SEC. The Pac-12's not even here. Hey, I just came back from 2024. Yeah? How's the Pac-12 doing? I don't know how to tell you this, Jeff. They're not there. What do you mean? It's gone. It's gone. It was there and then it wasn't. It's just gone. Well, that can't be. Conferences don't just disappear. Well, it happened to the Southwest Conference, Jeff. Yeah, but that doesn't happen anymore. This is the modern age. How could a conference as well-positioned and prosperous, how could a conference with so many big brains in the room like the Pac-12 just cease to exist? Maybe the brains aren't as big as you think they are, Jeff. Yeah, so imagine coming back from 2024 and delivering that little bombshell. Pac-12's gone. Well, certainly that means the Big 12's been gone for a long time, right? No, Big 12's still there. Some dude named Brett running the show? I don't know, never heard of him. But they're still there. Some of our schools actually went there. But yeah, Texas and OU, we didn't get them. They went to the SEC. In related news, USC and Oregon are in the Big Ten now, as is Washington and UCLA. And I'm not done. Stanford, ACC. Cal, ACC. We've got multiple teams that used to be in the Pac-12 footprint that can see the Pacific Ocean from their offices who are going to play conference games against teams that can see the Atlantic Ocean from their offices, as it turns out. Multiple conferences, by the way. Yeah. Offense regressed. Did you ever see this coming? Remember 2014 when all the offensive explosion has started to happen? This is like Gus Malzahn at Auburn running the RPO stuff. And I think there was an Iron Bowl where the final was like 55-44. And everyone's looking and saying, oh, even Bama under Saban. Even they're having to sacrifice what they believed in once upon a time. And even they're having to embrace the new offensive revolution in college football. Hey, 2016, college football games had 58 points per game on average. Last year, they had 53.5. So there may have been a revolution at some point, but, buddy, it got extinguished pretty quickly. What happened there? Well, I think what happened maybe is defensive coaches didn't become stupid. Defensive coaches just needed time to look across the ball and say, oh, that's what you guys are going to do now? Okay, let us recruit different caliber players. Let us change our strength and conditioning. Let us change our nutrition. Let us change our critical factors we look for in personnel. Defense is adjusted. I was told it would never happen. I was told that college football was going to be pinball forever. But apparently, those people didn't know what they were talking about. Hey, 2014, you're there, you're playing the college football game. Imagine coming to 2024 and finding out there hasn't been another one since then. You guys are telling me somehow, some way, we're going to go a decade without a college football video game, and when it comes back, it's EA college football. It's not even NCAA. Oh, and while I'm on the subject, wait till I tell you what's happened to the NCAA. It's kind of not there anymore either. Now, unlike the Pac-12, oh, it's still in existence. I can go to the office. I can knock on the door. A receptionist will probably let me in. But if I run afoul of NCAA rules, nothing really happens. In fact, we could run afoul of NCAA laws, and then they try and come after us, and we take them to court. We can cripple them in court, and it's happened. Yet, believe me, in 2014, I know this sounds crazy, but by 2024, those four letters mean nothing. It's NCAA. It's just like a punchline. It's an afterthought. And the death knell, revenue sharing. Yes, folks, in 2014, Let me tell you what's happening. What's happening is the media rights money's not going down. The TV numbers just keep going up and up. So good news, the sport is growing, quote unquote. And therefore, those media rights deals, they just keep going up and up. The sport, again, growing. You guys aren't going to see any of the money. You're just fans. But don't worry, they're going to tell you it's growing. But it's all going to come crashing down because in 2024, they're going to have to settle some class action lawsuits. And they're going to have to very, very, very stubbornly agree we're going to have to share the revenue with the players. Yes, 2014 was not that long ago. And yet if I said any of that in 2014, you would have thought I was insane. Which begs the question, what's happening over the next decade? Do you feel like there is some semblance of normalcy that will return to the sport, or do you feel like it will just continue to be chaotic? Because frankly, I don't think anything can continue to be as chaotic as the sport has been. Like, I think it'll kind of be a trend line that regresses back more towards normalcy, because right now, every year's been like that. No 2 years have looked the same. The sport has churned itself to a 30% or 35% degree, it seems like every year, to where you go in a 2 or 3 year time frame, the whole sport's changed. I don't think that's going to continue to happen. However, I am not so bold as to sit here and tell you, I know where we're going to be in 2034. I have no idea. I don't know where we're going to be in 2025. So your best guess is as good as mine. I'll be happy to listen. Happy to have you guys in. It's a jam-packed show. I have so much going on. I'm smack dab in the middle of a gas station recruiting war and probably going to have some activity on that front this week, so stay tuned. At Late Kick Josh on the socials. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, again, at Late Kick Josh on the socials. But it's also just about summer now. Summer means concerts. It's concert season. Summer concert season is upon us. And with that, I have to deliver a heartfelt thoughts and prayers to Tim McGraw. Condolences to Tim McGraw and his crew and everyone associated with him. He's fine. Like, he's not dead or anything. Several of his songs are. He played Chicago Saturday night. And the reason I know several of his songs met their demise is because Brandon Walker murdered him. Roll it, Colin.
But I'm gonna live where the green grass grows. Watch my corn pop up in rows. Every night reducting lows to you. Raise our kids where the good Lord's blessed. Point our rocking chairs towards the west. And our dreams where the peaceful river flows. Where the green grass.
Stop it, Colin. Just stop it. I can't take any more. Just stop it. No one at the United Center stopped this. No one at the United Center thought to jump in and say, sir, can you imagine paying $1,500 to take your loved one, significant other, daughter, son, I don't know, mom, dad, to their first ever Tim McGraw concert, and you score floor seats, and you think it's going to be the greatest night of your life, and instead you stand next to a dude who sounds like he's passing a kidney stone. Brandon Walker did more damage in the United Center Saturday night than Michael Jordan ever did in his career. And that's a fact. So that was released courtesy of Brandon Walker, okay? He started texting me the other day, favorite Tim McGraw song. And you know what? To his credit, I will give him credit on this. He and I agreed Everywhere is the best Tim McGraw song. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact. But then I said, what's he asking me about Tim McGraw for? And so I searched, and he went and saw Tim McGraw last night. Oh, he posted videos. Oh, my goodness. The audio wasn't distorted. That's just really what happened. He did that in front of God and everybody. So, yeah, it's concert season. Careful what you wish for, people. Let's ask some questions about college football. Big questions on the horizon as the season is like less than 90 days away now. What's Alabama going to be post Nick Saban? Everyone's got a theory. I've got a theory. You've got a theory. What are they going to be, though? I'm not just talking about this year, but this is specific to 2024. Is this going to be the kind of team that is kind of like Kalen DeBoer at Washington, where it's a whole bunch of close games? They're still good, but it's a bunch of close games. Hey, by the way, Bama had kind of been that way over the past couple of years, so that wouldn't be new. They were playing a lot of one-possession games too. It's kind of out of the norm. Are they going to be that? How's recruiting going to go? It's official visit season right now, so they're doing the same thing a lot of other folks doing. They're welcoming official visitors on campus. I wonder, as we get into 2024, they're going to play Wisconsin on the road pretty early. They're going to have Georgia come into Tuscaloosa in the first month of the season. And so we'll see them in two pretty high-profile games back-to-back. At Wisconsin and Georgia, there's a bye week between those, but we'll see them in two pretty high-profile games. We'll start to get a feel. Like, what's the Kalen DeBoer offense going to be like? With Jalen Milroe, they brought in Parker Brailsford, who's the new center. They had chronic issues snapping the ball last year, like the stuff you'd get mad at if your Pee-wee team struggled with it. You had to watch Alabama in overtime of a playoff game still struggle with it. Is that going to be fixed? If it is, how much better are they going to be? I had some guys like Caleb Downs walk out the door in the transfer portal. Are they still good enough? Do you still watch them and say, yeah, that's Bama. Athletically, they're still a cut above almost everyone in the sport. And then also the aura around the program, not a layer of invincibility, but you always knew if Bama's on the schedule, it's going to take a little bit more than we've shown to this point in the season to beat them. Is that how they feel? You know, when you've got Bama on the schedule, do you still look at that script A and feel the same way you felt? Or do you look at it and say, yeah, it's Bama, but it's not that Bama, it's this Bama? Time will tell. One of the things I'm most excited to watch this year. And it's not like 2024 is this final referendum on what Kalen DeBoer at Alabama is going to be. But there's no excuse not to win right off the bat. When you inherit what he gets to inherit, when your program's already ready-made for you and it gets handed to you, no sanctions, like no debt. The transfer portal exodus wasn't nearly as bad as it could have been. They brought in some guys. They landed guys like Ryan Williams in their first truncated recruiting cycle. Should win this year. I think they have the fifth best odds to win the national championship this year. So I'm excited to see what they make of 2024. Now, go out to the nation's heartland for a second. America's college football conference, as I call it. The reason I call the Big 12 America's College Football Conference is because it exemplifies a lot of what a lot of us claim we love about the sport, but also, in a much more competitively balanced sense, I think the Big 12 is America's College Football Conference because you have no earthly idea what the hierarchy is going to be. Sure, FanDuel can come out and they can tell us, well, Utah and Kansas State have an over-under win total of 9.5. Then there's Kansas at 8.5. Then there's Arizona. They can do that. FanDuel can give us the odds to win the Big 12. But what happens when we look at the odds to win the Big 10 or the SEC? There are favorites, and there's like a tier 1, and then there's a huge drop-off. In the Big 12, Utah, Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Arizona, Oklahoma State, UCF, they're all in a lead pack. And then there's another two of them, TCU and West Virginia. That is 2, 4, 6, 8. That's 10 teams out of 13 with odds of better than plus 2,000 to win the conference. So my question is, will we see any of those teams actually separate? And my answer is probably no. That's my guess, at least. I don't have an answer yet. But Utah is going to come in there as the odds-on favorite to win the conference, their first year in the conference. Is that actually the way it goes down? Does Kyle Whittingham come in and teach some of the same lessons in the Big 12 that he had been teaching out there in the Pac-12? Is that the way it goes down? Will a team like Kansas State continue to roll, but not just roll? Do they actually elevate? Is there a moment in November where we look at a team in the Big 12 and say, you know, they're playing better ball, substantially better ball. They have separated. They're better than anyone else in that conference because that's rare. We don't see that much in the Big 12. And when you take Texas and OU out of the equation, I think there's oxygen that's like pumped into the room. It's the same. We were just talking about Saban a second ago. When you take that coach out of the room in the SEC, there's a lot of oxygen in the room. So does it get distributed evenly to the remainder, to the rest of the guys there, or does someone chomp it up? Well, it's the same in the Big 12. You got a lot of oxygen in the room right now. Does it get dispersed evenly? Or does Kansas State, does Iowa State, does TCU, does someone make a move to make us 2 or 3 years from now say, you know, once Texas and OU left, man, you know who made a big move? Texas Tech. They made a leaps and bounds improvement. Maybe it was going to happen anyway, but boy, it's hard to ignore. They really revved the engine once Texas and OU left. We'll see. Hey, I got to go to South Bend. Someone said I have not talked Notre Dame enough. Do we agree with that, by the way? I thought we've talked Notre Dame a fair amount on the show. Nevertheless, it is one of my big questions for 2024. Is this going to be the same Notre Dame or a new Notre Dame? Same old Notre Dame's not a bad thing. Same old Notre Dame would simply mean they're one of the 10 best teams and 10 best programs in the country. Same old Notre Dame will also mean I keep saying that, and people will keep coming at me in the mentions and say, no, Notre Dame's overrated. And then we'll get into that whole back and forth, and we'll end up realizing, no, they're properly rated because no one's ranking them or rating them in the top 4. That's it. Like an age-old debate on the show. If you're new, if this is your first time watching, and I'm speaking so redundantly and monotonally, it's because we've been down that road 1,000 times. Like, I can't be putting Notre Dame at number 8, and you tell me they're overrated, and then I ask, well, where are they rated? Number 8. Like, why shouldn't they be rated number 8? Well, they can't beat Ohio State. Well, Ohio State's like number 3. So they shouldn't be beating Ohio State. Nevertheless, Marcus Freeman's got a really good team this year. It's also the era of the expanded playoff. I think Notre Dame will make the playoff this year. They are minus 170 to make the playoff. Now, that's, I guess, great news. I don't know, depending on your perspective. I guess it's great news, but there's that thing here that's also present with a team like Penn State. We've got teams who, on one hand, we know could change nothing about themselves and be good enough in a 12-team era, whereas they weren't quite good enough in a 4-team era. But that assumes that making the playoff carries the same value that it used to. Well, it doesn't. We may pretend it for a couple of years, but by 2026 or 27, you're going to realize, hey, there are a bunch of teams that are landing like number 9 seeds or number 10 seeds, and we celebrated them the first couple of years, but now we've come to realize, why are we celebrating something now that we wouldn't have celebrated? It's the same caliber of play that we used to see. It's just we lowered the bar. Therefore, they're able to clear the bar now, and then they keep getting beaten once they get in the playoff. Well, that's my question with Notre Dame. Is that what they become? Do they become a team because the bar gets lowered a little bit? They clear it more frequently. And Notre Dame had made the playoffs a couple of times. Don't get me wrong. Really, really good program. They had already made the playoff a couple of times, even in the 4-team era. Really good. However, this is a team that kind of profiles as one who will be there every year. Is it just a bunch of one and done? Is it just a bunch of, well, you don't have a conference to win, you get in the playoff, and you get bounced in the first or second round, and that's it? Or, conversely, do we see this new era of Notre Dame football where they're a legitimate national championship player? Because those two things are not the same. Capable of hopping in the playoff versus a national championship contender, those are two totally different things. And then there's that whole other argument that people have had forever of, will they or won't they ever join a conference? And everyone's dug in like an Alabama tick, as Jesse Ventura said. Everybody's dug in on that one way or the other. But the one thing that I guess theoretically could move the needle on that is there's a rule right now. You're not locking down one of those first 4 seeds and therefore a first-round bye unless what? Unless you win your conference. Well, Notre Dame doesn't have a conference to win. So there's a world, of course, where Notre Dame goes 10-2 and they get the 11 seed, and no one thinks about this. But there's also a world that we have a 2012 redo. Notre Dame goes undefeated in the regular season. Imagine Notre Dame being number 1 in the country, and they're undefeated, and then come playoff time, the best they can be is number 5, because they can't be one of the top 4 seeds. And they agreed to this. This is not some breaking news to them. They signed off on it. They agreed. They said, yeah, we understand. We could never have a first-round bye. We get it. We're maintaining our independence. Well, they may very well feel that way. There's no way to truly test that theory. Just like a dam, there's no way to know if that thing's fully fortified until we put some water pressure on it. I'd kind of be interested to see this world where Notre Dame's number 1 or number 2 in the country, undefeated, great season, better than a lot of teams that are going to get buys, but they don't get one. And they have to go play some red-hot team in the first round, and even if they win, they get banged up, and when they go into the second round and they play a rested Ohio State, and they get beaten overtime, and they're sitting there thinking to themselves, wait a minute, did we just cost ourselves a shot at a national championship for the sake of independence? The answer may be yes. And then the follow-up question is independence that important to us? And for a lot of them, it is. I've never been mad at Notre Dame's independence. Never had a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it now. But as the world of college football changes, I'm just openly curious, if that were to go down that way, this year or any other year, is that enough? Is that enough to change some minds? And here's one to think about. We normally don't do this in June. I'll do it, though. The college football hot seat right now, how would you describe it? It's kind of weird right now. If you think about it, which names out there, major college football, major programs, who's on the hot seat? Some of you would say Billy Napier at Florida. Okay. Some of you would say Sam Pittman at Arkansas. Okay. Dave Aranda at Baylor. Totally fair. Keep going. Keep going. Because we just mentioned 3 programs, and none of them have an over-under win total at FanDuel of even 6. They're all below that. So keep going. Is my question out there. Like, who else is on the hot seat? It was Neil Brown at West Virginia, but they won 9 games last year. He's not on the hot seat. Neil Brown could contend for the Big 12 this year. Who's on the hot seat? It's really weird because if you think about it, it's not the norm. In college football, normally we come into the season and there's a half a dozen to a dozen guys any given year who you're looking at and you're saying, do or die season for him. And yet here we are, and we're smack dab in the middle of the dawning of a new era. So we're going to a 12-team playoff. We got more money being pumped into the sport than ever before through media rights deals. Coaching salaries continue to escalate. They've never been bigger than they are right now. That is not a recipe for continued tranquility. So my thought on this, my theory on this is the hot seat scene is about to drastically change itself this year. I don't know who's going to be victimized. I think the better question for us to ask, if you're interested in this sort of thing, is not who's on the hot seat. Those answers are pretty evident, I think. Who's one bad season away? And that answer expands the circle exponentially because this is college football, and we all know a lot of folks are one bad season away from losing their job. But I think with the bigger money and the bigger playoff field and the ability to overhaul your roster quicker, patience has never been thinner. If you're allowed to pay kids, and now we're distributing revenue shares to them, and 12 teams make the playoff, and we can go overhaul 40, 50% of our roster in one cycle, there's no excuse to be bad for a long time. So, therefore, if patience is running thin, how am I sitting here in June? Thankfully, I get to say it, but how am I sitting here in June saying, not very many guys on the hot seat? Believe me, that is about to change. A lot about this sport is unpredictable. Not that. That's about to change. Zanesville, Ohio, kind of sort of the place to be this weekend. Zanesville, Ohio was where we opened a brand new Academy Sports and Outdoors. Yes, we did. Now, I didn't physically go up there and cut the tape at the door or anything like that. But what I did do is I said, I'm picking 5 of you. If you confirm to me that you were there at the grand opening, picture of the receipt, picture of you in the parking lot, picture of you in the store, I don't care. Go dap up one of the cashiers and give a shout out on the show. I don't care. If you prove to me you were there, 5 of you are going to get a chalice of supremacy. So this is just an example. If you're listening on podcast, these are the kind of submissions that we get. We grabbed 2 of them. I could have grabbed like a dozen of them. These are the kind of submissions we get anytime there's a new Academy Sports and Outdoors opening. Now, I gave 2 chali away already. In the interest of fairness, and we are nothing on the show if we're not fair, I've hit the pause button because I'm giving you guys one more day. I've got a bunch of submissions I'm sitting on right here. So we could give out 100 chali right now if we wanted to. I'm going to give you time. If you haven't already made it to the Zanesville, Ohio Academy Sports and Outdoors during the grand opening this weekend, you still got time to go. Don't panic. Don't rush. It's not Christmas Eve. You still got time. Document your visit. Submit it to me at Late Kick Josh, however you want to do it. Public is the best way, but however you want to do it. And probably tomorrow morning, I'll pick the other 3. And chali of supremacy will be handed out. Guys, you can knock on our door with $1 million, and I am not selling you a chalice of supremacy. I promise, because the offers, while not 7 figures, have been pretty substantial for those bad boys. You can only get them through special giveaway, as I see fit, at my discretion on the show. Now, as for those of you who don't live in Zanesville, Academy Sports and Outdoors is still the place for you. This is a QR code. If you're going to shop Academy, do it through our QR code. And if you can't snap the QR code, just look in the show description right here on the YouTube channel. There's a link. Purchase until your heart is content. Just go through those. Now, I needed a wagon. well, excuse me, a lovely lady in my life needed a wagon the other day. So what we did is, I love to go in person to Academy. I just had her buy through the link online and then set it for pickup instead of delivery. So we went to pick it up, but even then, we worked through the QR code. So even if you're going to go in person, buy your stuff through the QR code or the link and then go pick it up in person. It's a lot quicker, it's more efficient, and you help the show remain free of charge to you. We appreciate, as always, our friends at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Okay, we continue because it is June, but it could be April or May or July, and it would still be bold prediction season. Colin, here's your endpoint. Bold prediction season is rolling on. What do you believe, and believe so fervently that you would bet your own money on it for the college football season this year? There is, I would say, almost unprecedented boldness in this batch here tonight. Think about this one. Got the new expanded playoff, right? Alexander from Charleston, South Carolina says the SEC champion is the only SEC team in the playoffs' final 8. So that would be the quarterfinals. That's the second round. He's telling me only one SEC team is standing in the second round of the playoff. Well, that's a 9.5, my friend. That's very bold. That's a 9.5. If you predict something and it lands 9.5 or bolder and it hits, I'm sending you a chalice of supremacy. One team is automatically there. I don't know if you realize that. The SEC champ is already going to be there because they're going to get a first-round bye. So already, the best you can do is push here, and that's what you said. You said the champ's going to be there, but that's it. No other SEC teams. Okay, so that means no at-large teams from the SEC are going to make it. Hey, there's a half-decent chance that 2 SEC teams play each other in round 1, which means by default, one of them has to make it to the second round, in addition to the champ that's already there with the bye. So that would be a loser. Just out of the interest of curiosity, we went to FanDuel and we looked at the odds, the SEC team's odds to win the whole thing. The SEC begins the season in the playoff odds with the number 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 12, 13, 15, and 19 team. And you're telling me they're sending one to the second round? I don't buy it. That's a 9.5 on the boldness scale. Next up, we go to Morgantown, West Virginia for this prediction. It's a parlay. Joe, also from Charleston, says West Virginia wins 9 to 10 games. That's part 1. They upset Penn State to start the season. That's 2. And they end up in the Big 12 championship game. That's 3. And then there was a hypothetical about the quarterback and the Heisman. But we're going to go 1, 2, 3. This is essentially a 3-leg parlay. All of these would be at plus odds. Let's break them down one at a time. We already have a line on the Penn State game. So West Virginia faces Penn State to begin the season. Now, it's a home game. That's the good news. The bad news is you're a 10-point dog in that game. So if chalk holds, already the prediction's blown up. Your over-under win total is 6.5. So if you're going to win 9 or 10 games, you've got to go substantially over that. Pause on that. Number 3, you've got the 9th best odds to win the Big 12, and yet you're going to check into the Big 12 championship game. Now, obviously, some of this is redundant. If they're good enough to beat Penn State, that means they may very well be good enough to go over their win total and get up there in the 9 wins, 10 wins range. If they're in the 9 or 10 win range, then that means they're probably in the Big 12 championship game hunt. I just don't know if I feel this to that degree. I am up on West Virginia. To that degree, it's tough to say. This is a 9.25 on the boldness scale. Now, you may say, how could that not be a 9.5 or a 9.75? Well, when doing bold predictions in this conference, remember the golden rule on this show. It's the Big 12. There is no bold prediction in the Big 12. Quite literally, anything can happen in the Big 12. Can anything happen in the Big 10? Our next bold predictor thinks so. Cody from Athens, Georgia says Michigan will go under 9.5 wins. Well, that's not bold. That's just a bet. I appreciate it, Cody. I know that sounded kind of jerkish. I appreciate the submission there, but that's their over-under win total. Michigan's over-under win total is 9.5, so I know it's heavily juiced to the under, so this is technically not even a 50-50 proposition. The implied odds there suggest that you're making closer to like a 55% probability prediction, which means it's unbold. It's kind of calm. It's a calm prediction. They lost the quarterback, the head coach, both coordinators. They play 5 of the top 25 playoff odds teams. They play 3 of the top 5 playoff odds teams. They're dogs versus Texas. They're dogs versus Ohio State. Probably will be a point spread underdog against Oregon, though let's hold off because that game's not until November. This is like a 5 on the boldness scale. If Michigan goes 9-3, it'd be a pretty good year. It'd fall below Michigan fans' standards, but it'd be a pretty good year. If they go 9-3, this prediction hits. This is not a bold prediction, but it's a prediction that I thought we should put in the show. And lastly, what would it be? What would a Sunday night show be without a 10 on the boldness scale? Daryl from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, says the ACC champ, Florida State, will face the Big 12 champ, UCF, in the college football playoff. Oh, wow. Okay, so this is a 10 on the boldness scale. And I'm going to tell you why. A few reasons. Number one of these elements is out of their control. Even if both of them make the playoff, they've still got to be paired with each other. Like they've got to find each other in the playoff. Florida State's got to win the ACC. That's not a big deal. They're the current odds-on favorite to win the ACC. UCF's got to win the Big 12. They are the 8th best odds team in the Big 12 to start the season. So just that part happening, that's a big deal. Both of them win their conference championships. But here's the other part. Remember, if both of them win their conferences, they're going to have first-round byes. So they're not playing in the first round. So they'd probably end up playing, what in like the semifinals? Because they wouldn't play in the second round. You can't be paired up in the second round either because you're one of the top 4 seeds. So the earliest they could face off is a semifinal game. That means both of them have to not only win their conferences, make the playoff with a bye, win their respective first playoff games, then they still have to be paired up. That's too much for me. So that's a 10 on the boldness scale. If that one happens, though, you guys are not prepared for the messaging that will come out of Orlando, Florida. Because these folks went to the Peach Bowl in 2017 and claimed they won the national championship, and every single one of you got that hook squarely in your lip. They've still got you. They've still got you today. They put that banner up in the stadium. I was down there a couple of months ago. I was walking around the stadium, the bounce house, as they call it. And there it was, 2017 national champions. Oh, it's great. I get it. I refuse to be victimized by the UCF 2017 title discussion, but many of you are victims. It is the bowl version of the Sarah McLachlan special. It is the playoff version of the Sarah McLachlan special. You might as well have Colin just lay the soft piano bed, and a lot of you start yelling into the air at the clouds about UCF and how they weren't national champs. Well, if they make the playoff and win the Big 12, make the playoff, win a game in the playoff, and then they're facing off against Florida State, don't even let them get that far. But if they beat one of the big boys in state in a playoff game, and keep in mind they will have already, I believe, played Florida this year. So what happens if they beat Florida in the regular season and then beat Florida State in the playoff? Jesse, do they play Miami this year? I don't think they do. And I know Jesse doesn't have Miami's schedule scribbled on his hand. It would be a very toxic situation for everyone who is not UCF. It wouldn't be a good time for you guys. So in the interest of your own sanity, judging by how 2017 ended for you, I would just go ahead and say, take care of them. Take care of them beforehand. Yeah, they don't play Miami. They do go to Iowa State on October 19th, which has no place in this discussion whatsoever, but I still felt the need to cite that. All right, let's move on. We got several more things to get to, very pressing matters, even though it is June. I'm looking at the live chat. Anytime I look at the live chat, it's out of context. Like I look over here, Joe just said the SEC is done. I have no clue what that means, but thank you, Joe. What are some other? Producer Jesse isn't real. He's a bot. That actually may be true. Anyway, I appreciate you guys being active over there. Just make sure if you're here, make sure you're subscribed. And if you're listening on podcast and it's Monday morning and you're traveling to work in Terre Haute, Indiana, thank you. Good people in Terre Haute. Just make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. That's it. Nothing else needs to be done on your end. Thank you so much. Let us move on. It's that time. We're going to go ahead and get into this. Okay, so Blake Brockermeyer did a really good breakdown, I thought, over on 247sports.com about the best offensive line units in the country coming into this year. And he went really in depth on it. A lot of this stood out to me because I couldn't pick it apart. Like, I looked at it and said, yeah, that pretty much sounds spot on. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire top 10. Like, Oregon's in here, Miami's in here, Ole Miss, Missouri, they're all in here. But I wanted to start in his top 6, and I just wanted to go down this list right quick. Bama's at number 6. So Alabama brings back Tyler Booker and Jaden Roberts. And those are probably two of the better, if not maybe the best, interior offensive line combos in the country. Caden Proctor is not at Iowa anymore. That was just a vacation. So he went to Iowa, but now he's back. So you took care of left tackle. They imported Parker Brailsford at center from Washington, who was the center on the Joe Moore Award-winning unit last year. So this is going to be a pretty good unit. Now, my question, and Blake said the same thing, is not, do they have frontline guys? They're good. They will be one of the best offensive lines in the country, 1 through 5. If anyone goes down, how quality is the depth behind them? I have a sneaking suspicion maybe the quality of depth on the offensive line at Alabama this year may not be quite at the level that you're used to seeing it. That may not be a long-term thing, but given the situation that staff walked into, it could be a lot worse. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look in Knoxville at Tennessee. Tennessee's got one of the best offensive lines in the country this year. They added Lance Hurd. It was a huge addition. He was basically the third best tackle at LSU, but LSU's got 2 of the best tackles in the country. So Lance Hurd comes up there, and they can immediately plug him in at left tackle because Hurd's one of the best tackles in the country. It's just that LSU happens to have an overabundance down there, especially in the portal era. And so Tennessee was the beneficiary. But Cooper Mays at center, John Campbell Jr. at right tackle. You've got Spraggins over at right guard, 95 combined starts between those guys. And then Dane Davis is their number 6. This is a really important thing to monitor always, but especially in the expansion era where you're just going to play more games if you want to get to where you want to go. Especially on offensive line, how many guys do you have? 6, 7, 8. How many of those guys do you have that aren't just plug and go at their position? How many of them are like Dane Davis, who you could count on to play multiple positions? How many of them are cross-trained like that? Because he's going to play. He's not going to be listed as a starter, but he's going to play. It could be in spot duty, in blowouts, or it could be in week 1 you have a guy go down. He ends up being your starter the rest of the year at a position that you already had penciled in for someone else. So that's very good because he's very versatile. Texas, absolutely smack dab in the middle of this equation. Texas has got one of the best offensive lines in the country. Kelvin Banks, to me, is the best tackle in the country. And he's been in that conversation ever since the day he stepped on campus. The right side combo of Campbell and Cam Williams, 6'3", 322 and 6'5", 360, respectively. Just run right. Just run right. Even in the SEC, just run right. It'll work out. When all else fails at Texas this year, just run the ball to the right. And you know what? Running to the left's not a bad idea either. They are experienced at center. I think they got really good competition at left guard. So I don't know who emerges there. We can pencil it in. But fall camp will produce a good player there at left guard. 123 returning starts. Texas is in a very, very good spot. You'll notice there are no teams I'm mentioning here whose over-under win totals like 5 or 6, but they got one of the best offensive lines in the country. It's almost like this position is very important. Georgia, we weren't going to go very long without talking about them. Georgia's got a ton of experience here this year. Xavier Truss at right tackle, 28 starts. Ernest Green at left tackle, 14 starts. Dylan Fairchild, left guard, 10 starts. Ratledge is back again for the 19th year. He's got 28 starts at right guard. Week 1 against Clemson's a really sneaky good game. It's not because the point spread's really close. Georgia's favored by nearly 2 touchdowns. But if you believe in the matchup game, Georgia's offensive line versus Clemson's D front, really, really good. Really good. Now, I don't know whether Clemson can score, but could be a really, really good early test. For all you know, maybe it's one of the best fronts that Georgia faces all year. Who knows? LSU, way up there. LSU's got some questions elsewhere. Offensive line is not one of them. One of the best they've had come through there in a while. I think this is the best offensive tackle combo in college football this year. Will Campbell at left tackle, 26 starts, first-round NFL draft pick. Emory Jones at right tackle, 24 starts, same thing. Those guys are the reason that Herb is up at Tennessee now. 4 of their 5 have 20-plus career starts to their name. DJ Chester, I guess if you want to try and start asking questions, that's a guy who's going to be probably plugged in at center for them. Not a lot of experience at all there. But, man, outside of that, it's really nice. You got Jaden Daniels going off to the NFL. Garrett Nussmeier starting, but he's not a true freshman. Now, he's green. He's not a true freshman, but this is the offensive line he gets to work behind. That's why those guys down there are pretty excited and confident they can have a pretty high-caliber run game this year, too. Speaking of a high-caliber run game, who won the Doak Walker Award last year? Well, it was Ollie Gordon II at Oklahoma State. And the reason he did that is because Oklahoma State's got an incredible offensive line. How about Blake putting Oklahoma State as the number 1 offensive line in the country coming into this year? And you know what? I think we've identified the reason he believes that. Allow me to read the classifications here. Redshirt senior, redshirt senior, redshirt senior, redshirt senior, redshirt senior. Oklahoma State has 172 career starts coming in just the starting 5 on their offensive line. Cooper, there at left tackle, 49. Actually, these aren't positions. This is just in order of experience. 49 starts, 40 starts, 34 starts, 26, 23. Yeah, that's the offensive line that paved the way for Gordon last year. They're all back. And you know what? With that rule they came down with the other day, where I can't remember the exact wording of it, but it's gonna let Cam Rising have an 8th or 9th year of eligibility if he wants it. Maybe some of these guys are eligible for that as well. So it's not even a guarantee. This is their last year. But Oklahoma State, in a Big 12 where anything could happen, don't be overlooking a team that has, it's like 5 million combined starts on the offensive line. Oh, yes. Position unit talk. That's how you know we're close. They're watching us in Norfolk, Virginia, Fort Dodge, Iowa, and Destin, Florida. Thank you guys so much. I have to be very careful. I have to lift myself up, but it's not for the reasons you think. It's because I did legs today, and the chair I'm sitting in cuts off the circulation to my legs. And as you know, if you've watched or followed for a while, I suffer migraine-esque leg cramps. Many of you have sent remedies. I appreciate that. But they still fall short sometimes. And so I have to be very careful because the slightest move the wrong way in this chair could tie my hamstrings up for dozens of minutes and render me incapacitated and would have to end the show. And we have a drill. I have a hand signal for Colin if it ever comes to that. It's the same hand signal they use in WWF if a guy gets hurt. It's just that right there. So I hope we don't have to use it. But to avoid it, I have to raise myself up. I have to let the circulation go. And again, these are problems we shouldn't. Colin, we should not be dealing with these problems. We came here in 2020, and then Director Colin and I had to hang out at the studio all by ourselves because everyone else went home for COVID. And it was back then that we said, man, imagine one day if we ever make it. This is the most consumed college football show in digital media, and we still have chairs that cut your circulation off. Like, what? At management, where are you? The impact freshmen in college football this year. It's a list so long, we didn't even get to all the ones we need to get to the other night. I didn't even talk about Colin Simmons. Colin Simmons is an edge guy at Texas. And you went throughout spring, and we kept hearing, impact player, watch out for Simmons, impact player. He exited spring in the 2 deep at edge. And the thing about it is, KJ Bolden's the same way at Georgia. Like a lot of these guys would clearly start at most places in the country. If you come in and you're in the 2 deep, at Texas or Georgia or anywhere like that as a true freshman, you are cream of the crop. You are some of the best of the best. And so Colin Simmons, we think he fits that description. 6'3", 234. He's a 5-star, number 4 edge guy in the 2024 cycle. Yes, both eyes we have on Colin Simmons. Josiah Thompson, Thompson, you got to be careful. Name pronunciation, because if I drop a Josiah Thomas, I will never hear the end of it. Josiah Thompson at South Carolina, he was a 4-star. He's number 2 offensive tackle in the country this past cycle. Got to play immediately. Is what it is. South Carolina was bad on all fronts last year, offensive line. They couldn't run it. They couldn't protect. And they've got to use true freshmen. He's coming in. He repped with the ones in the spring. So there was no guesswork. There was no earn it, even though technically you've got to earn it, but he is being counted on as the starting left tackle for them this year. South Carolina needs help. They need more than just this, but they need him. 6'7", 300 pounds. They need him to be everything they thought he was in recruiting. And it looked like he was in spring, so not knocking him. I'm just saying there aren't a lot of other options there. Elijah Lofton at Miami is not a name I think a lot of folks are talking about only because he wasn't even one of the 5 highest-rated guys in Miami's class. He was the number 10 tight end in the class. But the thing about it is, I will never say star ratings are meaningless. They're the opposite of that. But you find out the most when guys get on campus. And Elijah Lofton got on campus, and he surprised a lot of people. Well, maybe he surprised outsiders. Maybe the staff knew what they were getting the whole time. He's versatile. Okay, so here's what's happening. Last year, I told you I thought Elijah Arroyo was going to break out. I thought Arroyo was going to break out, then he got hurt, and he couldn't really fulfill on what I still think is immense potential. So Arroyo, we think, is healthy this year. So you may think to yourself, okay, well, if Arroyo's healthy, Elijah Lofton's not going to play. Well, if he didn't know to play other positions, he probably wouldn't stand in line to play a lot. But they had him at H-back, had him some wide receiver, some running back during the spring, very versatile, Swiss Army knife type. And so somehow, some way, I think Elijah Lofton is going to be an impact true freshman for Miami this season. Their tight ends had 18 catches total last year. Horrible. So it's got to be a lot better this year, and I think it will because a lot of that's injury-related. And we mentioned this guy earlier in the show, Ryan Williams at Alabama. Ryan Williams was not an early enrollee. Unlike all these other guys, we're talking about spring practice, Ryan Williams wasn't there in spring for Alabama. But he was the first big recruiting win for Kalen DeBoer. He's played in Bryant-Denny Stadium because that's where they played the playoffs. So he's a summer arrival. The wide receiver room had a few departures, like Isaiah Bond. One of the byproducts of the portal era is you go make one of the most memorable plays in Iron Bowl history and then you leave the team. It is what it is. But this is a guy that they've gotten in. Now, much like some of the other ones we're talking about, the playing time is there, but it is Alabama as well. So it's not like they're looking and saying, well, Ryan Williams has got to come in and carry us or else we're screwed. 8-4, here we come. It's not that, but there's going to be an opportunity here. And I think he'll seize it, and I think he'll be a big-time player eventually for them this year. Remember, as Mimo always said, the season does not end in week 1. The season begins in week 1. So if he's not starting, in other words, against whoever they play in week 1, if he's not catching 5 balls a game by early October, we're not writing him off. It's not an early enrollee. I care about November. What's he doing in November if he's healthy? And I think Ryan Williams would be doing a fair amount for Alabama in November. So, yes, there are impact freshmen all over the place. We just humbly try and find them on this show. Just circulation adjustment. Don't worry about it. Bama, Jesse, what'd they have? They had the 5th best odds to win the title. Georgia currently has the best odds to win the title. I mentioned all of these things, and you can find them at FanDuel. FanDuel is the exclusive odds provider of our show, of Pate State, of the entire university. And we appreciate them. They cook up a lot of stuff over there. I, as I've said many times over the past couple of months, am a particularly big fan of the yes-no propositions to make the playoff. Because now it's not just go bet them if you think they're going to make the playoff. You can go bet teams if you think they're not going to make the playoff. And, of course, the higher they're rated, the better return you can get on that investment. Like if you think Texas is going to miss the playoff, you can go make a lot of money betting that right now. Make sure it's money you have because you may very well stand to lose it. But you can go bet that right now. So we appreciate FanDuel. Always have, always will. They are the exclusive odds provider of our show. Mood Tracker is the way we like to end every show this time of year. The Mood Tracker is quite simply taking a temperature of the fan base. How are they feeling? Tonight we're doing Georgia. The mood at Georgia is sort of like a first on the frontier sort of mood. We don't really get to experience this anymore because we've seen everything there is in the United States. But once upon a time, folks were sort of seeing it and saying, where is everybody? Wow, this is just wide open. We can go explore. We can go catalog things, chart things, claim. You can do that as well. Anytime you're new at a party, you walk in and there's a buffet over here and no one's touched it yet, you realize, wow, I'm first at the party. Now, some people say it's lame to be first at the party. But if all the food is untouched, that's not lame, especially if you're like me and you know you're going to leave early. Georgia is kind of looking over the frontier of college football. Got a new college football playoff era. You've got a new era in the SEC with teams coming in. You've got a new coaching era with Nick Saban no longer being here. You've got a new rules era where revenue sharing is part of the equation. And basically, in any of those categories you look and you ask, who's better positioned than Georgia? Georgia's the best positioned program in the country right now. The last 5 years in recruiting, they finished first, fourth, third, second, first on the field. Last 5 years, 12-2, 7-3 in the COVID year, 14-1, national title, 15-0, national title, 13-1, played in the SEC championship game last year. They're already rolling. It's not like I'm predicting anything crazy here, but now you get to the new frontier, and you look at Clemson, and everyone's asking questions about whether Clemson's still going to be around. Is Clemson still Clemson? They're not asking that about Georgia. I've seen a lot of, for some reason, over the weekend, comparisons between Kirby and Dabo. I don't even know the context there. I have no clue where it came from, so you guys do with that what you want to. They're not talking about those two programs the same way, though. There's no question about the trajectory of Georgia. The biggest blessing here is Kirby Smart, which I know sounds very commonsensical. Like, people listen to that and say, oh, what, duh? You're telling us Kirby Smart's good? What I'm telling you is even the people who think he's the best in the game, some of them don't get how good he is. You see him win on Saturday. I truly think it's lost on a majority of people because, quite frankly, unless you've seen it up close, you probably can't fully appreciate what it takes to have a program operating at this level, a major college football program. I'm not telling you how hard it is to win a title. Teams have done that before. Coaches have done that before. And then 5 years later, you're asking what happened. I'm talking about taking one that hasn't cruised at that level consistently. They've been at a really good level. Have them cruise at an elite level and then not get drowned by complacency. That alone, come what may on the field, that alone is one of the biggest accomplishments that you can have in high-level competition. And Kirby's done it. When we were there this spring, we sat down with him. He was on the show for like 30, 40 minutes or something like that. And I was asking, how much of being a coach can you not know about until you become a coach? He said about 90% of it. And then I asked him, you guys failed to meet your expectation last year. Was it complacency, or did you just not have the ball bounce your way? And he explained it pretty methodically. I don't think there was an ounce of complacency. I don't think they have not dealt with that there. I don't think they've dealt with that on a large scale at Georgia. That's the biggest credit. Kirby never had a head coaching job before he was there. So it's not like he brought decades of experience in. He's learned on the fly. I don't care who he learned under. Saban had countless other guys go off and try it their way, and they failed. He's legit. That's why it's worked for him. I think he may be at the best job in the country, but no one else has done what he's doing there. So it's not the job that's doing it. It's the dude who has the job who's doing it. And I know everyone looks at him, and if you look at any given power rating of head coaches right now, chances are Kirby's number one or number two, probably number one. I don't think those folks even really get how good he is. It's just so unfathomable. Number one, how hard it is to win consistently. Even if you recruit top classes every year, just how hard it is to win. He says that stuff all the time. Some folks call BS on it. He's right. He's right. It's insanely hard to win, even if you got the more talented roster. We score in 3s and 7s in this game. Ball bounces really funny ways. Injuries happen at the most inopportune of times. Being good comes with a cost. Everyone puts the crosshairs on your forehead. So there are a million consequences to that success. But the winning is one thing. But the sustaining, man, it's so hard. You could be in business. It could be in football. It could be wherever you want to talk about. The default in everyone's mind now, though, is we got to go through Georgia. And that's the way they talked about Bama for a long time under Nick Saban. Didn't matter how good you thought a team was in August, whether it was LSU or maybe it was Tennessee, maybe it was Georgia. You always knew in the back of your mind, hey, we're good. I think we're really good. We're probably going to have to go through Alabama at some point. Well, now they think that about Georgia. We're good. Ohio State right now. Think we got the best team in the country. You know, I'm sure Texas feels really good. But you know what Texas knows? Texas knows we're going to have to go through Georgia. Quite literally, they're coming to our house. Ohio State got a taste of it a couple of years ago. Ohio State played an A game. One of the best games I've been to was that playoff game, semifinal in Atlanta a couple of years ago. C.J. Stroud played the best game of his career, and it wasn't enough. I was talking to Jesse about this before the show. Do you have any idea how many times Ohio State actually loses that game if they play their A game? Ohio State wins that thing 9 times out of 10 because you have no business being within single digits of Ohio State with Stroud at quarterback, and that roster is loaded as it is if they play their A game. Ohio State plays their A game, Stroud plays like a maniac, and Georgia somehow, someway still wins, still finds a way to win. That's in the back of your mind every year. No matter how good we are, we're going to have to go through Georgia at some point. Now, maybe you will, maybe you won't, but that's the default in everyone's mind. That's how you know you're the standard in college football. People compare themselves to you. At Georgia, they don't compare themselves to anyone but a standard. That's because you're the standard. So the mood amongst Georgia fans obviously is pretty confident, and they're very well positioned, even being on this sort of new frontier. Now, that's not a guarantee of anything. Kirby may never win another national title because it's really hard to do. He may win 4 of them because he's well positioned to do so. There are no knowns, but the certainty in this sport is Georgia will be in the mix every year, and that's all you can ask for. All I can ask is that you watch the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Just share it with 5 of your friends, and then I won't ask you anything else. Thank you guys so much. We will be back Thursday night. Yeah, Thursday night live, same time. I'll get you a Late Kick Extra pod sometime during the day on Tuesday, so check the podcast feeds. Until then, for producer Jesse, for director Colin, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great start to your week, and God bless.